Today's episode was with Whitney Dikoume, and she is based out of Calgary, Alberta, Canada. Her origin story is she wasn't born in Canada. She started out in Cameroon, then to Greece, then to Montreal, then to Calgary, and with that comes a lot of life experience. Growing up in an athletic family really shaped her into who she is today, really helped foster her training and athletic therapist career in who she was surrounded by. We talk about how it's important to have a village to surround yourself with, having your tribe, your community, your support group. We talked about balance in career and finding ways to not burn out. We talked about women in sport. We talked about women in the profession of fitness. We talked about all kinds of things which you should listen to. I would encourage, or I guess request of you, when you're listening to these episodes, please tag me at Christian Little and at The Lifestyle Chase in a screenshot of the episode to help get this out to a wider audience, to help get more people listening to stories that can perhaps inspire them or motivate them to see more in themselves. Also be sure to tag Whitney, of course. Tag her at WHITSFIT_. That's the easiest way to say it, because at Witsfit, you never know how to spell that. You never know where the underscore is. In any case, this was an awesome episode. I hope you listen to it. I hope you share it with a friend. Thanks for listening. Here we go. Welcome to The Lifestyle Chase, Season 2. This podcast features high performers who have found a way to live their best life while balancing their health, wellness, friends, and family. I'm your host, Chris Little. Let's get started. The Lifestyle Chase is brought to you by Yeg Fitness. Yeg Fitness is Edmonton, Alberta, Canada's healthy lifestyle community, creating and supporting active living for all. Check them out online at yegfitness.ca and on social media at Yeg Fitness. Alright, so welcome to episode 112 of The Lifestyle Chase, and I am joined by the one and only Whitney Dikoume. How are you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm pretty good. How is this whole situation that we are in changing your lifestyle?
Oh, it's a learning process. So normally I'm the person that's always on a go. Like I always have things going on. I like being productive. I like working. I find this whole situation has taught me to calm down a little bit, that it's okay to take time. It's okay to figure out what you really love doing. It's okay to, sleep in once in a while. But also, it's also taught me how much I love what I do for a living. And I've been more inspired to look at different avenues, whether it's online training or, it's just writing more blogs or educating people. Yeah. So it's been a whole learning experience.
So for anybody that's listening to this that has no idea who you are or what you're all about, I want you to describe yourself as though you are at a party and you're just trying to tell people all the cool things about you.
Okay. So my name is Whitney Dikoume. I am a certified athletic therapist and I am also a strength coach. So I have a huge passion for teaching people how their body works and also helping them understand that the way their body works might be different from the way someone else's body works, and that's okay. I love working with young athletes because I find they can be very passionate about doing things the right way. And if I can teach them at that age how to move, how to run, how to take up their bodies properly, then when they get to be older, they don't have to deal with that, I grew up in an athletic family, so I love sports, like a huge passion. And I grew up playing sports, so I knew that whenever I decided to pick a career in the future, I wanted it to be something that involved sports as well and involved education, and that made a difference. So right now, being able to coach and being an athletic therapist, I find I can make a difference with so many different athletes, no matter what part of your life they're at, whether it's injury whether it's performance and yeah.
So when it comes to being in an athletic family, what does
Mhm.
that look like for you? Like, what kind of sports did your family members play, or do they play?
So my dad played soccer professionally in Europe. And I've got two younger brothers. The middle one plays basketball. He just finished his last year at U of A. And the youngest one plays football. So he's in high school right now. So I find we're very competitive. It doesn't matter what sport we're playing or what activity we're doing. We always seem to challenge each other that way, which is a lot of fun. Um, and I find we love paying attention to detail because it's what made us as good as we are in the sports that we play. I played soccer and I did track growing up, and then now I play football. Yeah.
So with your dad playing soccer, did that mean that you were moving around a lot, or was that all kind of before you were a kid?
um, we moved around a little bit. So I was born in Cameroon, and then when I was five and a half, six, my dad got a contract to play soccer in Greece. So we moved to Greece, and when we were there, my parents decided to set a base for us in Athens. And when my dad was playing at different teams, he was the one who traveled around and then would always come back over the summer and off season and stuff like that.
What was it like growing up in Cameroon and in Greece?
I don't remember much from Cameroon because I left. I was like really young. Growing up in Greece was definitely one of the best experiences of my life. I don't think I appreciated it as much as I should have. Um, Greeks are They're amazing people. They have a way of life that's so much different than what it is in North America. And I find growing up here, that was the hardest thing to get used to. It's like Greeks can be hardworking, but work isn't all they live about. They live for, you know. They love enjoying family time. They love vacation. Family time is a priority for them over work. And I find moving here, sometimes it's really easy for it to be the opposite. You know, you're like, oh, I put in 12, 15 hours at work and I go back home and I barely have time to just be around family. The weather was so much better. I will, I will have to say. Um, the food was also delicious. Like, yes, we still make Greek food living here, but the vegetables are just not the same.
Yeah,
Yeah.
food in different areas is like you can't take that for granted. Like you can try and replace it in the different regions, but it's just like there's probably something that grows naturally in a certain area, or there's probably somebody who's been cooking the same thing for several generations where when you try and like put that food in like McDonald's or something, it's just not gonna be the same.
Oh yeah. In the beginning, I was like, we're using the exact same recipes, like the exact same thing. We've been making this forever. Why does it taste different? And it's like, oh, the vegetables are a little bit different, you know?
Yeah, yeah. So when it comes to that work-life balance that you kind of alluded to, like that difference that you sort of noticed between Greece and Canada, when's the
Mm-hmm.
first time that you've really noticed that in yourself, in your career? Because you're pretty hardworking from what I can see, from what I know of you. You would have had to have a moment where it's like, oh, I need to take a step back. Can you think of a moment like that?
Uh, yeah. So when I first graduated university, I was a fitness consultant and I had just started my personal training. Um, and I would work from like 4:15 in the morning till about 8 p.m. at night. And I would live at home with my parents at the time. And I remember I would go like 3, 4 days without seeing anyone. Like, yeah, it would be like, yeah, a couple days where didn't see anyone, didn't talk to anyone. And I'm like, how can we live in the same house? And I don't hear your voice. I don't see your face. I don't even know what's going on in your life. I'm like, that's a bit of a problem. Um, but it wasn't something I could change immediately. I found it was like something I noticed, but I was like, I'll deal with that later until things started changing. So either my brother would have a football game and he would be like, you know, like the player of the game. And I remember missing games like I not even knowing what position he played. And I was like, okay, wait a minute. Like we actually have to actively put in the effort to not make work my whole life. And then, so I decided to change my schedule a little bit, and I wasn't a fitness consultant anymore, and I just became just a personal trainer. So then I had a bit more time flexibility. Yeah.
And so, if somebody that you knew was kind of in that situation, but they were thinking about money, because like I've found that sometimes it's just easier to get that the slow growth and just choose things that are meaningful and don't chase after like finances early on because you're just going to burn yourself out. But if you came
Yeah.
across someone who's listening to this and they're taking on way more than they can, but they're doing it because they're just thinking about the money and just meeting the needs of their bills. What would you do to get them to kind of see like maybe they should take a step back?
I think for someone like that, the biggest thing is them understanding that money isn't everything. Um, yes, you can spend hours and you can save so much, or you can be able to pay every single one of your bills. But if at the end of the day, you don't have someone that's checking in on you, or you don't have people that you can just lean on, it's way too stressful of a life to live, you know? Um, yes, you might love your job and you might think you can spend hours there, but you need to have an outlet. You need to have a support system around you. Like, you know, they say it takes a village. And if all you're doing is just working and saving money, you're not creating that village. And there's going to be a time when you're going to need them to support you and you won't have that. So
Yeah.
if you're looking at success as it just being you being able to pay your bills or you being able to save money, you're looking at success the wrong way. Because if you're gone, what are you leaving behind? You know?
Yeah, it's so true, and I'm really happy that you said it takes a village because I was like looking through some of the stuff that you've been featured in or collaborated with, and there's an article that stood out, and it's just a statement of it takes a village, and with a lot of statements, like I know I have a lot of my own statements that I reflect on. Things kind of revolve around like that message or that mantra. For you, when was the moment that you were like, oh no, like I need a village, and these are the people in my village. When was the moment, and who are the people that make up your community?
Ooh, okay. I think, oh, okay. This is 3 years ago. I think that's when I realized I needed a village. So for 2 years, right after university, my whole mindset was like, I gotta be successful. I gotta make something of myself. And that was like me trying to do like whatever opportunity came my way. It was like I'm gonna take it, and it wasn't because I was looking for like the money wasn't my goal. It was just getting a name for myself. You know, like whether it was working with a football team for hours, or whatever clinic jobs opened up, or whatever client needed training, I would step up for it. But then after 2 years, I realized that I was burning out. And I would go into this denial space of like, oh, if I'm burning out, it means I'm weak. You know, it means I'm not passionate enough about what I'm doing. And it's, this might be too difficult. And I'm like, this is what I want to do. So I'm not even going to think about the difficulty of it. And I tried so long for, I think like, yeah. So for like 2, 3 months, I tried so hard to be like, no, I'm fine. I just gotta like push harder. And it got so bad that I started getting anxiety attacks. Um, and even when I first started getting them, I remember being like, nope, I'm fine. It's just me being stressed. I just need to, you know, sleep it off and I'll be okay. But then eventually the anxiety attacks became so bad that I wouldn't be able to drive into work. Like just the thought of driving and my hands would be shaking or my heart rate would be, you know, off the roof. And I just felt this feeling of like the world's about to fall apart. There's nothing I can do about it. And I didn't tell anyone about it until we had a close family friend that passed away. And I was driving back from Edmonton at the time, and I was in the car with my mom, and she found out and she told me. And I was like, okay. We got home, and I remember the moment I parked the car and I got into the house, I just like fell down and started crying, and my whole body was shaking. And I'm like, it's never been this bad, to the point where I can't breathe. And I am trying to like remember every single thing I would tell someone else that's like going to, like just try and focus on what's in front of you, just breathe through it. And being the oldest child, I find my parents have always seen me as the one that they could lean on whenever something was going on. And I remember breaking down in front of my mom and her just like holding me and me just crying. I think I cried for like a good half hour. Um, and then after that, she's like, okay, look, we need you to take things slow. Um, we know that you're very hardworking. We know that you love doing things as best as you can, but sometimes you have to let us help you. Um, and I remember just looking at her in that moment and being like, I am so used to being everyone else's support system that I don't know how to let others support me when they need to. Um, so she's definitely one of the people in my village. And that changed my mindset in how I approach people that I train, or I approach the people around me. It's, I know what my limits are. Like, I know, let's say, for example, with strength training, I know what I'm good at, I know what I'm not good at. And if I get to a certain point where I'm working with someone and they've kind of plateaued working with me, sometimes I'll send them away to work with somebody else, and then they can come back to me if that's what they want. Um, I also know that it's okay to not be the smartest person in the room all the time. And you can't take care of what everybody needs. If I can say it that way. Like, we need doctors. We need, you know, you need like pilots. You need all these different people that make up someone's life. And if that person's going to be successful, which is what I want all those around me to be, then they have to have all these different pieces that make up the puzzle of who they are. Um, and I am lucky enough that I have found great friends who have allowed me to lean on them when I need to. Some of them are athletic therapists, some of them are strength coaches, some of them are doctors, some of them are business owners, and I find like we all realize the difficulties our jobs require, and we're all very hardworking people and very, what's the word for it? Uh, people who are always looking to do the best that they can. And I find we all have those moments where we just can't do it. And it's good to have that village around you that's like, okay, you're having a hard time. That's okay. We're here. It doesn't mean that because you're having a hard time now, you're going to have a hard time forever. And those people support you. And then when you're better, somebody else might fall down and then you support them as well. So,
Yeah, and that's extremely relevant to this time. Like everybody, I hope people are finding their village right now. I hope they have one because we're all going to need one. I know I need one.
yeah.
It's crazy. When it comes to last year, we're going to talk about the year 2019, and it's just a shot in the dark for me. I just want to know, you recap that. What's the best piece of advice that you got in that year, and what makes it so good?
Uh, you can't control everything. I think that was the biggest advice I got last year. Um, it's, yeah, you have to know what you can control and let go of what you can't control. And you letting go of what you can't control doesn't necessarily mean that you're giving up. Um, it just means that you're not able to control it, and that's okay. You know, I think that was the biggest lesson 2019 tried to teach me, and I didn't realize that until November. Very slow learner in that aspect. Um, but yeah, you can't you can't control everything.
So for myself, I know that I've learned that lesson many times. Is there something that happened to you, or was it just a general thing, just general life moment?
I think it was general life moment. So um, I Worked with a couple athletes, um, and I find with the rehab process, it can have lots of ups and downs. And there are a couple of people that I would work with, and we would target like rehab from every aspect. And they would be feeling like positive and they'd be ready to go back into the field of play. But then something would happen, and then you would take a step back, and it's like, but we did everything, we did all the steps, you were ready to go. And I find sometimes that was frustrating for the athlete themselves because they would see how much work they put into it. But then also it can be frustrating for me as a therapist because I'm like, what am I missing? Like, what did I do? Did I do something wrong along the process? And that's why it's catching on to us now. But then I realized, no, you can do everything absolutely fine, but you can't control life. Um, and work, it was the same thing. Like, I find in the business that I'm at, you're going to have some very busy periods and you've got low periods, and it's a part of life. It doesn't matter. It's not a reflection of how good you are at your job. It's just the way life works. And it's like, what do you, in that moment where things are slow, what can you control? Focus on that instead of focusing on all the things you can't control, because then that's just going to stress you out. And then you're stressed for something you can't control, and things can unwind real quick after that.
So true. In any given week, and especially the weeks now where everything is just crazy, nobody really knows what to expect. What are your non negotiables in your week? What are the things that have to happen to make the week a good week relative to what is going on?
Um, One thing for me is I've got to work out. Um, I find me being in a healthier um, headspace allows me to positively affect those around me. Um, I love educating people, so I've been trying to find different ways to do that. Social media has been a big one for me, just being able to connect with people, whether it's answering their questions in terms of injuries um, or exercise. Because I find like a lot of people that have had a high training routine don't know what to do when they're at home. And there's so many different things you can do that don't require you lifting 500 pounds and doing squats and deadlifts. No, it's like a time to take care of your body. And I want to show people that, but in doing that, I find I'm also telling myself that, you
Yeah.
know, like right now, mobility is a big thing for me because I'm like, I am normally the person that's in the gym and like lifting, so like lifting all the time. But now I don't necessarily have those equipment. So it's like, how do I still take care of my body? But in a way that is positive instead of a way that I'm just making it tired and stressed anymore. Um, I I've spent more time with my family, which has been uh, the biggest. I've looked at this, I'm like, it's a blessing in disguise because we're always gonna go, but this is the first time where everyone's at home and you get to actually know the person more than you thought you did. And I'm like, oh, it's family, so I know every single thing I can possibly know about my brothers. But then now that I'm around them so much, I'm like, oh, okay, you did this and you did that, and yeah. So those are like the biggest things where I'm like, I'm not changing.
Yeah, absolutely. Have you learned more about yourself during this time?
Yes. Um, at first, so I used to work full time, and then I would also do all this stuff online, whether it was like um, making like workout videos or injury rehab videos and stuff like that. And it would get to the point where I was like, am I just doing this for the sake of doing it, or am I doing it because I actually enjoy doing it? And then now that I'm not working as much, I find I'm still doing it. I'm still excited about educating. I'm still excited about being creative. I still love reading papers as much as I did when I was working because I love getting that knowledge and sharing that knowledge. So I'm realizing that it's such an important piece of who I am. It's not just something that I did because I was working at the time. I'm also realizing that I I can be I love working in a stressful environment, but to a limit. So right now I give myself deadlines, and I find I'm not as stressed and overwhelmed by the deadlines. It's like, okay, I gotta do this by this time today. I'm gonna put all my like mind and focus into it and I'll get it done. While if I'm always in the go, I find like sometimes the stress can be so much that it's almost debilitating. And instead of loving what I'm doing, I end up hating it. Um, I finally have the time to start reading again, which is something I've been telling myself for 2 years now that I'll finally just read a book. Um, yeah.
So when it comes to the fitness industry, who are three people that you really look up to?
Oh, there's so many. Narrow it down to three. Um, there is, she's a female skills coach in Atlanta. Her name is Lily Abdelmaliak. Probably saying that name wrong. But she works with a lot of professional, like football players, baseball players, and I find the strength and conditioning world is it can be very tricky sometimes, and you have to come across as this very well, my experience, you have to come across as this very strong and stern and very knowledgeable individual. While I find me as a trainer or as a coach, yes, I know I have all this knowledge behind me, but I also want to make sure that the people that I'm working with are having a good time and that they are learning. I like having a good atmosphere. And I have been following her for a while, and I love the way she works with all these athletes, and her workouts are like hardcore, but they're also very thought of. And she educates her athletes, and her athletes are having a good time, and they know that they can lean on her whenever with whatever they need to achieve. So whether it's whatever skill, whether it's like becoming faster or becoming more powerful or whatever. And that's the kind of impact I want to have on athletes that I work with. So she's definitely one of my top coaches out there. Um, I don't know if you've heard of Kaiza Fit,
Yep.
but I love Kaiza um, because she has made fitness or being active, she makes it look so easy, whether it's like her 5 minute workouts or it's the creative ways that she works out because it takes away all the excuses of like, oh, I need all this equipment or I can't do that movement. It's just about get up and move and do stuff. So she would be the second person I look up to. Uh, third one. Hmm. Uh, Eric Cressy.
That's a
But
safe
not.
one. That's a good one. It's like everybody is like, oh, when I can't think of one, I'm just gonna say Eric Kress, and everybody in the world is like, yes, that was good. We
Yeah,
like
this is
him.
a good answer. Yeah. Um, I love the way he makes his athletes accountable. I think that's the biggest thing that I look up to him for. It's about like, yeah, I will be here, I will design a workout for you, but at the end of the day, you have to do it. And you have to learn to take care of your body. It's not just about, lifting, it's about rehab, it's about prehab, it's about what you're eating, how you sleep. And um, there is that whole like village concept coming back in. And it's cool to actually say the athletes that he work with are understanding that and are implementing that as well. Yeah.
Absolutely. When it comes to like being a female in the fitness
Mhm.
industry and
Mhm.
even just being a female of color, like it's probably a lot more difficult than for me. I'm like a white male. I can just stroll on into the gym and like I don't have very many obstacles. Did you find you had obstacles or were you pretty supported the whole way through?
Um, I think it was pretty supportive the whole way through. I don't think I came across a lot of obstacles. And I think the reason behind that was, no one, I think I'm a very approachable person. And I had a great support system going into it. So there are people that were telling me ever since I graduated, like, you should become a trainer. You're very smart. You're good at this. And I was like, I don't know. Like, I don't know if I have the personality for it. Um, but going into it, I had this like foundation that was like, just try it. If it doesn't work, we're here for you. And growing up with a lot of athletes, I I find I could tap into the athlete mentality, and I kind of knew like the questions that they had. And having two younger brothers that played sports, um, it kind of gave me an in. I'm gonna put it in that way, because a lot of the athletes that I started working with at first were my brother and their friends. And then my dad also owns a soccer club, so then I'll get athletes from that, and then you start to build a repertoire that way, if I can say that. And then eventually, the more athletes I work with, the more other athletes would see what I was doing, and they were like, "Oh, she knows what she's doing." And also, I'm a very strong and powerful athlete. Um, and I think sometimes when people come into a session and they're kind of unsure about, like, okay, like, she's a girl or she's a female, like, why would I train with her? And then they see that I can do the things I want them to do. It's not just about, oh, you should run this way. Um, I will show them how to run, or you shouldn't just lift this way. I will lift that way for them. Then you're like, oh, okay, maybe she knows what she's talking about. And then that respect comes in eventually. So I don't think I've had too much trouble with that. I kind of know my strengths, and I know how to use them very well.
Yeah, well, I think that's important for other people to attribute to that. Like everybody has strengths, I should say.
Mm-hmm.
And I think sometimes we kind of second guess ourselves, or sometimes we sell ourselves short. It's like everybody has a seat at the table kind of thing. And
Mm-hmm.
so you pull out that chair and you sit down. Like if you want to be in the fitness industry, you can be in the fitness industry. Granted, it takes work and it takes
Yeah.
a lot of like leading by example. Like you said, like
Mm-hmm.
you're strong, and so you can demo everything that you're programming, which is very important.
Yeah.
But like if you can do that, there's nobody that can say that you don't deserve to be coaching athletes on a male team or anything. Like there's so many opportunities, and there's actually like it's cool to see how many female like trainers and athletic therapists are in the industry right now, just absolutely crushing it. Like there's quite a few within like my circle of trainer friends where we're learning a lot of stuff from female professionals,
Mm-hmm.
and I think that makes sense. Like I mean, if half the world is male and half the world is female, it's
Yeah.
pretty good odds that it's gonna be a mix, hey?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
but I will say this: when you get to be on a podcast, or you're writing your articles, or you're putting your content on your social media, the more you do that, the more you're helping the fitness industry grow, which I think is wonderful because there's going to be people that follow me and they don't
Mm-hmm.
see themselves in me. Like it
Mm-hmm.
just isn't a match. They're thinking that I'm doing something that they like, but they're not being able to visualize themselves doing that. When they see you, they can visualize themselves doing that. And
Mm-hmm.
so then the more things that you put out, the more articles that you put out, the more podcast appearances that you have, the more that the industry grows. And it's just it would be the same with me, but it's like there's a lot of guys who look like me, talk like me, walk like me, that are already out in the forefront of things.
Yeah.
There's one thing that stands out to me with your magazine appearance. I was seeing that you've done some stuff with Impact Magazine. What was that
Yeah.
like for you?
Ah, bad. It was, I think it's a big thing that got me out of my comfort zone. So, when I first started getting into training, I remember my fitness manager at the time was Jackie Cooney, and she was like, "You know what? You're very smart. You've got the athletic therapy knowledge. Like, you should train more people." And she had me do this like a group fitness class, and I remember I was so stressed. Like, I was like, I don't like public speaking. I don't like talking in front of people. Like, can I just write the class out and have someone else read it? Like, and she was like, no, I want you to just try it and see how it goes. So I started teaching the class. I mean, the first one in my head was horrible, but I think everyone loved it because they kept coming back. And then I was like, oh, okay, I'm good. I like my public. I found my public speaking bubble. I'm just gonna keep it here. And then Impact Magazine was taking that and just, putting it out in the wider, uh, what's the word for it? Wider reach.
Yep,
Um,
yep.
and then suddenly I realized that if I love teaching and I love educating and um, I love having a positive impact in people's lives, this is a great opportunity for that. But also, it made me a bit more mindful of what I was saying and how I was saying it. Because I find if I'm teaching a class, the people get to see me, they get to see my facial expressions. I can, correct things if I need to correct things. While I find like if you're talking to a magazine, you have to make sure that whatever you're saying is um, it reflects who you are as best as possible. Because somebody can read a page on the paper and they could interpret it like the completely opposite way of what you were trying to say. Um, and also, the experience taught me that there are so many people in the fitness industry, and we are all so smart, and we are all so talented, and we are able to reach so many different people. Like you said, like there are people that you can reach that I can't reach, and people that I can reach that somebody else can't reach, or and it was exciting to see the way everyone was so passionate and so good at what they are doing. That suddenly I didn't feel like it was just my burden to educate and to, teach people on how to be healthier. So, yeah.
Yeah, well, I like that way of looking at it. It's basically there's no fear in contributing to the greater community
Mm-hmm.
because we all rise up together. Um,
Exactly.
Something that I really love about the local fitness magazine here, YEG Fitness, is they're implementing almost like a mandate almost to bring more exposure to women in sport, promote more women in sport, support more women in sport, just as a way to empower them, to
Mm-hmm.
even out the playing field, to give them an edge that males in sport already have. There's more professional sports leagues for males. It's like every sport has a televised professional sport league.
Mm-hmm.
In Edmonton, we have the world's best female boxer, Jelena Mrjenovic,
Mm-hmm.
and she's not on TV in the way that the male best boxer in the world is. And so it's like, what the hell is going on there? And so it's just to bring it on to the same level is imperative. So for me, like my personal bias is I'm glad to see that that magazines that I'm closely associated with are on the same page. They're like, let's equal things out. When I talk about that as like a white male dude talking to you, what is your first like reaction to that? Is it like hell yeah, or do I have opportunities to improve, or is it something that you're seeing often?
Um, Absolutely love your reaction. It's women in sports has been a topic that has been close to my heart, but I feel like it's suddenly being a bit more broadcasted than what it was when I was in university. Um, for example, now we have, well, the WNBA is being shown on TV. The games are a bit more, there are more people attending the games now than they were 5 years ago. And suddenly you've got female basketball players being talked about in Slam magazine, or it's not just about the upcoming top male high school graduate. You have like the upcoming top female high school graduate. You've got oh gosh, what's her name? Oh, I'm forgetting her name right now, but like the top athlete for the NCAA this year was a female, and suddenly women in sport, it's not that weird of an idea anymore, and I love living in a world that way. a world where, um, you know, little girls can look up to, uh, Candace Parker and be like, oh, I want to be a female, basketball player, or they can look up to, um, Serena Williams, or, um, I'm missing like all the names right now. But I find there's still a lot of work to be done in that aspect. And I think sometimes we focus on the wrong things. So, one of the biggest conversations I've had with my brothers, we can have this conversation forever, is um, how much female athletes get paid in compared to male athletes. And I understand the whole concept of, it's the business. It's so like the NBA has all this people that attend, they've got all this merchandise that people buy, while the WNBA doesn't have that. So it's hard for a league to support that and whatever. But is there a way where we can educate people to understand that like female sports is a very, what's the word for it? Like if you enjoy the technical aspect of sports, that's what you're gonna watch. And I think that's why a lot of male athletes that play a certain sport understand the female sport really well. Like there are a lot of basketball players, or like male basketball players, are like, oh, I will go to WNBA game, because you get to, like, whatever the coach writes down, that's what you're going to see. So you get to understand the technical aspect of sports. But I find a lot of people just watch sports because they love the show aspect of it. And once we start to change the mindset of sports, it's not just about just the entertainment of it. It's a lot of work that goes behind it. It's a lot of skill, a lot of, technique that goes behind it. Once people start understanding it more, then there might be an equal playing field between male and female sports.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You put it really well with the technical aspect, because I've noticed it as well. Like I wouldn't say I'm watching like basketball all the time, but I have watched it enough to see the intricacies between women's basketball and men's basketball. And yeah, it's like if you put out like something that team is going to do as a team that's going to be technical, you're more likely to see it on the women's team than the men's team. Like that
Mm-hmm.
is absolutely true, and it's really cool to watch, because as like male athletes can watch that, and then they can kind of get out of their own bias as to what they thought. You know how like sometimes in the fitness industry we think that we know everything that there is to know, but that
Mm-hmm.
is never going to be absolute truth. We're never going to know everything. We're always going to have to find a new circle of people, and then it's like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, okay, so I was been doing that wrong for years. Now I have to redo how I've done things, repattern, or maybe ignore some videos that I've made in the past. Like, I know for myself, there's plenty of like fitness videos that I look at and I'm like, I explained that better now. I didn't. That was not the best way to explain that.
Yeah. Yeah.
What's the
Definitely.
the biggest realization that you've had in terms of that? Like, is there like a demo video that you're just like, oh, wow, if I could get rid of that now, I would.
Whew. I think I'd have to go like way back in the feed. Well, I don't think it's necessarily a demo video, but it's how I explain things and how I cue things right now.
Yeah.
Um, because I remember when I first started training, for example, the squat is one of my absolute favorites, because everyone has their own way of cueing the squat. And um, I think I had like the textbook definition of like, oh, feet shoulder width apart, push the knees out. But then now, as when I'm teaching someone how to squat, depending on their sport, depending on what I'm trying to achieve, depending on their height, I find my squatting cues change. And it took me a while to realize that that's okay. When you're training someone, you're not having them conform to what your idea of a squat is. You are trying to figure out how to conform a squat into their own body type. Does that make sense? Um,
Absolutely.
and there are all these different articles that are coming out every day with like knees past your toes, knees don't go past your toes, or like um, chest up, high bar, low bar, and I like there's so much different stories or different ideas about it. Um, while the longer I'm in the training industry, the fitness industry, the more I realize that it's going to be different for each person, and that's okay.
Yeah.
Because I can be a stickler for form. Like I'm the kind of person that's like, nope, you're doing it wrong. We're not going to do this exercise. We're changing it completely. And then now I find I still do that, but before I do that, I ask myself why. Like, what am I trying to achieve? And I think that's been like my biggest growth throughout this whole thing. It's not just do it this way because the textbook says do it this way. I'm starting to have more of independent thinking, which I think is really important.
Yeah, absolutely. And just like one of the most underutilized continuing education pieces in fitness is just our ability to communicate. Like,
Mm-hmm.
we're getting better at communicating as we grow older as individuals and as we go through our own life experiences. Like, some of the most effective, like, general population trainers have just lived a very seasoned life. Like, they've just gone through some stuff. Maybe it's the trainers that have gone through their own weight loss journey. Maybe it's the trainers that like had a tough time with injuries and stuff. And it's like that sort of like leathered life experience that individual has helps them communicate and really like get through with that client and like relate to that client and like speak in that client's like lingo and jargon and language and something where they can like understand, like, yeah, we're doing a squat, we're gonna do my squat.
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
So then when it comes to contact sport, because you
Mm-hmm.
weren't always doing contact sport, what was it like when you entered into that world?
As an athlete or as an athletic therapist?
As an athlete.
Um, oh, it was fun. It was a lot of fun. Um, so soccer, I think a lot of people say soccer is a non-contact sport, but I beg to differ. I think it can be
Oh,
very
me too, I agree.
contact. Growing up, I'm like, I've definitely had a couple like cuts and bruises playing soccer as a kid. Um, but playing football was completely different. I think the biggest thing that I learned from that is we as humans are strong, like I think sometimes um, if you're just watching football and you've never played it, there's some hits that look absolutely brutal. And someone goes down and they pop back up in your head, you're like, how are they standing? How are they walking around? They seem to be fine. But I think being able to play football, there are a couple of hits that I've taken and like, I've gone down and I'm like, that should have hurt, but I don't feel pain. Okay. So we're okay. Um, and then there's some hits that I've gotten and I'm like, oh, that hurts. But then I still got back up. So it was just a whole realization of like, we're tough. And it's actually pretty cool when you realize that, oh, I don't break that easily. Okay, let's keep going. Let's see what else we can challenge ourselves with. Yeah.
Has that helped with like your mental strength too? Like, have you been able to attribute any of those lessons to like, hey, if anybody knocks me down emotionally, I can get back up. I got this.
I think so. I think so. I think the biggest thing it like playing football taught me was how to control my emotions a little bit better. And when I say that, I mean there are going to be times when the like games are going to get dirty a little bit, and there's always that chip shot here and there, and you're going to get knocked down. And it might be a cheap shot, it might not be a cheap shot, but in that moment, I've realized that I can't get mad. Like, yes, what the other person did might be horrible, or I might have gotten knocked down when in something I thought wasn't fair. But it's like I can control how I get up and how I play the next play. You know, if I go in and all I'm thinking of is like, oh, you elbowed me in the neck, and the moment the ball snaps, I'm coming for you. I'm just gonna not focus on what I'm supposed to be doing, and then that's when the other person has gotten to my head. So whenever I come across a situation that I can say like knocks me down, or a situation that I think is unfair, or a situation that might be a little overwhelming, which I find this whole COVID-19 thing has been, um, instead of me sitting down and trying to think of all the things it's taken away from me, or all the things I could have been doing, or all the plans I had that I'm not doing right now, it's like, let's focus on, again, what I can control. Let's focus on what I have right now. Let's focus on the next play. Let's do that. Because the moment your emotions are overwhelming you, that's when you're going to make the most mistakes, and that's when you're going to cost your team more than if you had just stuck to the play.
Yeah,
So,
that's a great conclusion, because honestly, this whole COVID-19 for me, there's been plenty of times when I felt like I guess metaphorically it felt like I got checked to the ground, like somebody just knocked me right out and I didn't see it coming. And then
mm-hmm.
instant reaction is just going to be like, what the hell, and then shove them back. But like, where's that going to get me? And like, there are things that I cannot control. Like, we can't control if, like, for me, I'm like 5'8" and probably 175 pounds. I can't control if like some 7 foot 250 pound dude comes running at me. Like, if they're gonna run at me, they're gonna run at me. And it's
Mm-hmm.
like how I take that hit, or how I recover, how I get back up, that's going to get me back on the field one day. If I get back up and say, "Oh, let's go, let's fight," and then all of a sudden the 7 foot dude just completely obliterates me, then there's no more fun journey for me. I'm probably done. But if I
Exactly.
like
Yeah.
take some time to breathe, understand my boundaries, tell people where they can help me or where they can give me space, then I'm more likely to be like, all right, this is cool. I'm just gonna change positions in this sport and be away from the 7 foot tall people.
Yeah. Exactly. Exactly.
So when it came to moving from Greece to Canada, what was that? What was going on in your life at that moment?
Oh, uh, lots of change. So when my parents decided to make the move, um, my dad had retired from soccer. It was like 2 years at that time, 2, 3 years at that time. I, my brother and I were going to a private American school, um, and a lot of things were changing. So I was used to, my dad being away all the time, me going to school and just kind of helping my mom as best as I could at the time. And then suddenly I had to get used to the school I was going to decided to shut down. So I was actually homeschooled for a while. So from being used to having my friends around me all the time, here I was like waking up in the morning and it was me and my brother on the kitchen table doing our homework. Um, Dad was home more often, and it was just a change in the way of life that I'd been used to for so long. So when we moved over, it was almost like I was ready for a change. I was ready to experience something new. I was ready to go to a new school. I was ready to have new friends. Like the change wasn't that bad at first because we moved from Athens to Montreal. And I think Montreal has this European vibe to it. So I was like, okay, cool, new country. I speak both English and French, so it wasn't a problem at all. I think the biggest change was when we moved from Montreal to Calgary, because I lived in downtown Athens. I was used to like cars and like noise at night before I went to bed, and here we were um, in the suburbs, and it was like quiet at like 7 o'clock in the evening, and I'm like, okay, this is really really weird. Um, Greece has this thing called the like siesta time. So from 3 o'clock till 6 o'clock, it's like nap time for everyone. So between that time, it was normal for it would be like reading time at home, or um, everyone would be in their rooms just kind of like relaxing. So when we first moved here, it was weird not having that, because it's like 3 to 6 is quiet time. Why are the neighbors being loud? Um, and then getting used to that was a big change. And then how I learned, because the private school I went to, um, it was a lot of like self learning. So it was like, here's your book. You have to go through this. If you've got any questions, come ask the teacher. But now I went to a Catholic high school and I had a teacher in front just kind of like talking. And I'm not a very auditory learner. I'm more of a visual, like a visual learner. So I love reading things and being able to write my own notes. So I had to learn how to study again and how to absorb information. And I think that was the biggest revelation about myself that has helped me kind of navigate life so far. It's like someone can talk to me and I won't understand until I can actually like read the information in front of me and then critically think of it myself and write my own notes.
That's
Yeah,
awesome. Well, I can only imagine how much that would have helped you in any of your studies through your career today. Like it's like nonstop school being in fitness. And
mm-hmm.
it's just like the better you are at processing information, the more you're going to be able to convert that over stuff that you're applying to your clients and the people that you're working with.
Exactly, exactly. I tell people that I never coach the same I never coach the exercise the same with two different people because I'll work with groups and sometimes I'll have a basketball player and a track athlete and they're both doing squats. And to someone else just looking at it, it's like, oh, you're doing squats, that's fine. But they are doing something completely different in their squats. And I find that's something that I've had to pick up from like reading, whether it's like how hips move with like different athletes in different sports and stuff like that. So, yeah.
So, if you could give one piece of advice on how to live your life to the fullest in the most authentic way, what would that piece of advice be?
Um, Take chances. I think that's the biggest thing. Take chances. No, but know that in those chances you can't control everything, and that is okay.
That's awesome advice.
I think that's yeah, yeah.
Well, thank you so much for joining me today.
No worries. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, you bet. Thank you so much for listening to this episode. The continuous support of the lifestyle chase means a lot to me, especially during a pandemic when it's like, is anybody really listening? And then people are. And that makes my heart grow 2 sizes bigger. And my challenge for you today is I want you to really think about a female personal trainer or a female athlete that you really admire and why. I want you to post that in the comments on the Lifestyle Chase page and just share the good things. Help females in the industry grow. Help females find other females to look up to. Because there are some badasses out there that deserve a shout out. And so the time is now. The time is meow to shout out the females that are just crushing it. Thank you for listening, and we'll catch you on the next one.